Hello class, I'm Madam Priscilla Ngaye from the School of Education, Department of Education Psychology and Technology. I'm interacting with my students for the unit BEP that 102, Comparative Education and Emerging Issues. I'd wish to continue from where we stopped last time. Today, we want to tackle the topic on samples of systems of education. I remember giving some samples of systems for groups to discuss, and that one was presented before the class. As a lecture, I want to do education in Britain. That education in Britain has a background, as all other educational systems. Under the background, one of the major characteristics of this system that makes it notable is the local autonomy in the management and control of education. In Britain, this characteristic was traced back to 1870 when it was introduced. This bill of Elementary Education Bill of 1870 introduced a national system of education which divided the country into school districts, establishing school boards which were in charge of levying taxes and maintaining elementary schools. There were other acts which enhanced this bill. For instance, we have one, the Education Act of 1902, which marked a new beginning in the English system of education. According to this act, all grades, i.e. elementary, primary, and secondary, were put under the control of one single local authority. The second bill is the Education Act of 1944, which introduced the 3 stages of the English education system. The same act made it the duty of the local education authority to contribute towards the spiritual, moral, mental, and physical development of the community. After that background of that system, we look at the structure of levels. The first one is the preschool education. This one caters for children aged 3 months to 3 years. Under this preschool, all children aged between 3 months and 3 years are supposed to be in preschool institutions. Provision of this education is largely in the hands of the private sector and voluntary sectors, and parents are ready to pay fees for their children. From the age of 3 years, this provision expands to other sectors, and it is developed in conjunction with other organizations which wish to finance it. This education is aimed at early learning goals, which covers 6 key curriculum areas. The second level is the primary education for ages 5 years to 11 years. Primary education is compulsory from the age of 5 years, and there is no charge for admitting a child in any school, especially the public funded schools. Primary education, it is open for parents. They can apply to any school for a vacancy for their child, and there are no charges for joining any public funded primary school. The curriculum is divided into 2 key stages. We call them KS. We have KS1 for ages 5 to 7 years and KS2 for ages 7 to 11 years. Pupils study all subjects in the national curriculum except for a foreign language. Although outside the national curriculum, religious education is compulsory from KS1. Primary education, again, promotion from one key to the next is automatic. This does not depend on performance or the results of any assessment. Again, there are statutory assessments, arrangements when a child enters primary school. At the end of KS1 and KS2, the same assessments are administered. They include teacher assessments and externally set, externally marked, and moderated tests, commonly known as statutory assessment tests. I would equate them to what we have in form of cards in our system of education. We now go to secondary education. For ages 11 years to 16 or 18 years, depending on the states. Most pupils transit from primary to secondary school at the age of 11 years, and there are no charges for admitting students to public funded secondary schools. We have the same feature in our system where we are talking of 100% transition from primary school to secondary school. Most secondary schools are comprehensive. They admit students regardless of their performance academically. They continue with the two more key stages. We had KS1, KS2, we now have KS3 and KS4. KS3 for ages 11 to 14 years and KS4 for ages 14 to 16 or 18 years, again depending on the states. A foreign language is compulsory from KS3, and at KS4 there are fewer compulsory subjects. Still under secondary education, there are two public examinations. We have the General Certificate of Secondary Education, GCSE, which is taken after 2 years at grade 10, and the General Certificate of Education, GCE, taken after another 2 years at grade 12. We are familiar with these features in our old system of the 7-4-2-3 system. That was before 844, where we had the O levels, KCSE, and the A levels, KACE. We had the O levels and the advanced level in that system. We still have the same in schools that offer international system of education. The requirements to study a subject at GCE, that is advanced level, is to score a mean grade C or above at the General Certificate of Secondary Education, that is O levels. So if you want to do a subject at advanced level, score as a mean grade C or above, then you can continue with the same at the advanced level. At the GCE, students study 10 subjects, but the average is 6. We know in our system, at Form 1 we study about 12 to 13 subjects, but at Form 4, you can do an average of 7 subjects at KCSE. Then at the GCE, after studying the 10 subjects with an average of 6, at advanced level, you can only study 4 to 5 subjects, which are examined and graded from grade A to E. Then still under secondary education, entry to university is based on the points scored at GCE or advanced level. If somebody studies in Uganda, they are going to call that one Form 5 and 6. So whatever you score at Form 5 and 6, that is what will determine what course you'll take at university. Then we go to higher education. Higher education covers all courses above the advanced level. And the institutions include universities, colleges, and polytechnics. Then the 1982 Higher Education Act ended the historical division between polytechnics and universities and allowed former polytechnics to award their own degrees and adopt a university title. I would equate that to what we have in our system today, where we are transforming polytechnics to universities. A good example is the present-day Technical University of Kenya, the TUK. Formerly, it was the Kenya Polytechnic. It acquired a university title. It now awards its own degrees and already has a university title. And many other institutions are following the same. Higher education institutions are autonomous. Each one determines its own admissions policy and requirements. Even in our own system, universities are autonomous. They determine their own admissions policy and requirements, and nobody questions what they do. That is what autonomy means. Still under higher education, we have a body. There is a Universities and Colleges Admissions Services, UCS, which acts as a central agency on behalf of the institutions of higher education. In our own system, this is done by the CUPS, formerly JAB. JAB used to admit students to universities. Today, that role is taken over by the CUPS, Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Admissions Services, which coordinates all the activities concerning admissions in universities, colleges, and polytechnics. Students' applications for courses are processed by the UCS The admission determined by the number of points achieved at GCE. This time around, KUPS is admitting students who have scored up to C+ and above to universities, then below that to diploma colleges, and below to TVETs and polytechnics. And the number of points, of course, determine the course the students take in those institutions. The English system of education has teacher education. We do have it in our own system. For them, teacher training is generally done in 4 years. Bachelor of Education degree course, or a bachelor's degree course followed by a 1-year postgraduate certificate in education, which is the PGCE, a feature we are very familiar with in our system as PGDE. This one is done after somebody, you either do a Bachelor of Education degree course for 4 years, that is very comprehensive. If you don't do that, you may have done a Bachelor of Arts degree course or a Bachelor of Science degree course. What happens is, if you wish to enter the teaching profession, you undertake a 1-year postgraduate diploma in education in all the universities. In all the universities handling teacher education, a PGDE course is offered within 1 year. You are either a science teacher or an arts teacher, depending on your undergraduate degree course. It was either a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. Then you become a teacher in the specific field. Teachers are not civil servants, and they're either employed by the local authority or individual institutions, depending on the type of school. Something you know very well as teacher trainees, that in this country, teachers are not civil servants. Teachers are under the TSC, or you are employed by the private institutions, and the terms will depend on the type of school. We also have some churches which have schools, mission schools. They employ their own teachers, but the condition as we speak today is that all teachers must have a TSC number, which means you have fulfilled all the conditions which the TSC has set for teachers. Administration and financing. In Britain, in the year 2000, approximately 96% of learners in primary, secondary and higher education were in public funded schools or institutions. Only 4% were in private institutions where parents pay fees. This one is a big success for the English system of education, having sponsored 96% of their students in primary, secondary and higher education, and only 4% choose to go to private institutions. I think that could be the same reason why the standard of education is very high. Then, at the national level, the responsibility of providing education is under the Department of Education and Skills in England, the DES. In our own system, services are provided by the Ministry of Education. And then, if there is any other service to be provided, like the financing, that one is done by HELB. For quality assurance, this one is done by the Q, Commission for University Education, formerly Chair, Commission for Higher Education. Still under administration and financing, the institutions are respected by a separate non-ministerial government department known as the Office for Standards in Education, Ofsted. In our own system, quality is assured by different organizations depending on the level. At primary, we have the inspectors. At secondary, we have the QASOS. At university, we have the Q, which ensures quality education is offered in those institutions. The planning and funding of higher education is the responsibility of the Learning and Skills Council in England, the LSC. Our planning is done by Q. We have the Q for standards, HELB for funds, and the KUPS for admissions. Those various organizations have to work together to ensure our education runs smoothly and we have standards. That is the end of our lecture 1. My students, I want to remind you that we are left with only 2 topics. That is one of them, samples of systems of education. I gave about 3 samples to groups. I've covered 1 to show you, in case you have to decide to define or to describe a system, what is required of you. Remember the background, remember the structural levels, remember the administration and financing, and all those are features found in all systems of education. What is now left is one topic, and I want to go straight to that one. It is issues, problems, challenges in education, and I remember giving this one to particular groups to discuss issues at certain levels. I want to take a general look at all of them, and I want to look at issues in preschool, issues in primary education, and issues in secondary education. We also have issues in university education in our own system. Issues in preschool are many. One of the reasons for this is the multiplicity of the institutions. Multiple means many. Preschools are very many in this country. We either call them nursery schools, pre-units, kindergartens, or daycare centers. All those ones over what you are calling preschool education. The activities are largely uncoordinated, simply because of the many owners of the institutions. You have private individuals owning some, you have churches owning others, you have local communities which organize themselves and run their own nursery school. We can also have NGOs and we call them the local government authorities. That is the local government authorities are what we are calling county governments. By the way, these days, they're in charge of the nursery schools. So our ECD teachers are now being taken care of by the local government authorities, that is the county governments. We know the institutions are many. They cater for very young children. Starting from 1 year or so, children are taken to preschool, baby care centers, daycare centers, to be taken care of by the teachers there. The issues also involve facilities and infrastructure in these institutions. If you happen to visit one that is in the urban center, this kind of institution will have very many facilities, very good buildings, classes for various age groups. They are not going to mix their preschool, their PP1, PP2, PP3, you'll be in separate rooms. Again, they have very good facilities indoor and outdoor. By the way, these ones attract parents even from outside the compound. If you are shopping for one, you simply look at what is on the compound in form of outdoor teaching learning facilities, and you can take your child there. Again, they have very good human resource. If the urban center, if the ECD in the urban center has 5 rooms, obviously they'll have 5 teachers. This institution is likely to have a cook to warm whatever the children are taking for lunch or break. They're likely to have a watchman at the gate, and maybe a driver or 2 in the case they transport their children to school. The situation is vice versa in the rural areas. I would challenge you to visit the nearest nursery school in your community and try to compare this one with the nursery school in the urban center. Most likely, the nursery school will be in a temporary building in case they are lucky to have one. Again, the nursery school may not even have a fence. They could be having the institution maybe in a rented compound. So no fence, no watchman, no driver, there is no transport for them. And if you ask me, the teacher plays all the roles. This one teacher is teaching all the children from age 3 to age 5. They are all mixed in one class. The same teacher could be taking care of whatever they take for break or lunch. If there is any warming to be done, the teacher will do the same. If there is any accounts to be taken, maybe finance, parents pay to this same teacher. The same teacher is in charge of maybe even organizing for their own pay. And therefore you can imagine that we take these children to class 1, the ones who learn in the urban centers, the ones who learn in the rural areas, we put them in one class when they join standard 1. And you can agree with me, those children are exposed to very different environments. The curriculum in preschools is an issue because if you mix a 2-year-old with a 5-year-old, surely you cannot teach them the same content. And again, each group is supposed to be taken care of on their own because they have physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual development. And if one is 2 years, the other one is 5 years, of course, there are different developmental levels. If you look at the same institutions, they have an issue of relevant teaching learning materials. These ones could be indoor or outdoor. In the urban centers, most of these materials are bought ready-made, very good quality. In the rural areas, the materials have to be improvised. The teacher has to make everything for themselves. And for a daily typical timetable, we know the child needs to be taken care of health-wise. Their welfare is to be taken care of. The spiritual needs, we have prayers, we have songs. There is time for them to sleep in the afternoon. They do have group activities in the field, and this all should be done on a daily basis. Again, the content of the curriculum is an issue. The big reason being, it is borrowed from the Western world. If you look at the toys we give to our children in nursery schools, most of the toys are very foreign. You give them cats, dogs, car toys, and what have you. These kind of things are not part of our culture. So the biggest problem here is we uproot our children from their cultures at a very early age. Meaning, when they get to class 4 or class 5, of course we expose them to a foreign culture in nursery school. So to bring them back to our culture will be a big problem when they join primary school. The other big issue in preschool is the training of the ECD teachers. Ask yourself, if you're able to sample 4 or 5 teachers and ask them where they trained, you'll be surprised, or even for how long, or what grade did they have at Form 4. Don't be surprised if you find a class 8 training in ECDE. A Form 4 training is the same. Of course, even here in MKU, we have our graduate teachers in ECDE. So all those ones are ECD teachers in this country. And therefore, the training is done in very many institutions under very different management. And of course, you can agree with me, the quality will not be the same. The quality is very different. Those ones that are trained in private institutions, religious institutions, the national government also offers ECD training for teachers. The local government authorities can also organize their own ECD training. But the danger here is we cannot have a uniform level for all of them. Maybe this time around, we might be lucky to have the TSC coordinating ECD teachers, but of course giving them TSC numbers, which I believe they are looking for a certain quality, a certain qualification. And that one will be very good for our system, so that we can have a uniform standard for ECD teachers in this country. We have issues in primary education. Now, we have an international practice of universal primary education, which we call UPE. The universal agreement was that by 1980, we shall have given all our people basic education, that is primary education. This target was set by the Conference of African States on the Development of Education that was held in Addis Ababa in 1961. Each East African country agreed to set their own target for their country. And this time around, all African countries are post-independence. We are past independence period. So each country is struggling to ensure that they offer education that is geared towards meeting their own requirements. Each country has its own requirements, and they are organizing themselves to meet the UPE, the Universal Primary Education. Imagine even in our own country, with 100% transition, even from nursery school to primary school, we are not yet meeting the target of 100% transition. You still find a few parents keeping their children away from school, even when they should be in school, and this education is free. They still have their own reasons for keeping their children away from school. Of course, all the countries agreed that by the year 2015, this target will be met. We are past that. We are a long way past that, but the target is not yet achieved. Another issue is gender equality. Gender equality, I want to base this between the male and female students. You find that there are very many barriers that challenge education opportunities for the girl child. But don't forget the boy child too. They also have their own challenges. Some of them include religion. Like in some religions, girls are supposed to be kept away from school. Some cultures marry off their girls very early in life, and those girls are withdrawn from school. Again, we have early pregnancies and early marriages. Some cultures encourage this, and we agree that it is good, although They should be taken to school just like their brothers. The child labor is another big issue. We have children hawking, children roaming in the streets, or they should be in school. Gender policy, we should strengthen it by making sure that our children, both boys and girls, go to school. We have issues in secondary school. You were in high school the other day, and you know the issues. Gender, regional equity. Some regions have more students in universities than others. We have another issue, that is the knowledge gap, where we have technology coming up very fast, and each country has to ensure that they're able to match with the rest of the world as far as technology is concerned. Internal and external efficiency in secondary education. Let us not have a lot of wastage between Form 1 and Form 4. In discipline, it's another big issue. Students drop out of school for their own reasons. We have issues in universal higher education. You are now at that level, my students. And I can agree with you that you know more of these issues than I do. Even some issues are not recorded in the books, but you know them. One thing, mission and vision. Why are we taking our students to university? To be able to serve in the community after school. So let us actually try to integrate education, citizenship, work, so that our students are balanced when they finish their education. Socio-economic equity, students from all social classes, upper class, middle class, and lower class, should be all given chance. Gender regional equity, men and women are we equal. Regional means, let us not have some regions of the country having many, many students, while others do not have students. Simply because higher education is financed by the taxpayers. So give all students chance, regardless of their regional background or even the gender. The blank academic year, which of course is brought about by long closures. Like now we are away from our institutions. Hopefully this one will not extend our completion time when we are through with our courses. Thank you very much. We have covered what is on the course outline, but we shall interact in the other forum, the online, in case of any issues.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.